Okay, hopefully I've shared the screen. Excellent. So I'm delighted to be here, and I'm just going to use a few minutes to report back from the end of a 4-year ERC project, whose title I think kind of sets the scene. It was called Expecting Ourselves: Embodied Prediction and the Construction of Conscious Experience. So I'm a philosopher by training. I work in cognitive science as well. I don't have any robots to show you. I wish I did. But what you will get in a few minutes here is a couple of thought experiments and some conjectures about the ways that embodiment might be really important for understanding consciousness, something that we might sometimes think of as almost another field of inquiry. So I think the bottom line from our project is that we think embodied action lies at the heart of all of the mysteries of consciousness. So much so that, in fact, what we think is you could just forget about consciousness and solve action. And that will be the way to make progress with everything that puzzles us about consciousness. So to be a bit more precise, the idea that we've been pursuing is that predictive engagement, which is about both predicting and performing action, is the key to the content and the quality of conscious experience. And just in a few minutes here, I think we can think about two prima facie puzzles, one about content and one about quality, that I think embodiment can help us solve. So there's that warning, a little bit of philosophy here. So the first puzzle is about content. We don't experience every sort of thing that we compute. We don't experience the computations of, say, zero crossings that plausibly underlie edge and boundary detection. And nor do we seem to directly experience highly abstract things like pure objecthood. We experience tables and chairs and mugs and things like that. So you can ask what's special about the stuff that makes it into experience. And I think the solution here is, the clue is that the typical contents of experience reflect the kinds of information suited to selecting one action over another, which sounds amazingly obvious. And actually, I think it is, but it has real implications. The idea is that some levels of the brain's predictive model, the stuff we've been looking at, preferentially reflect a possibility space for action. And of course, those actions will be making use of all of those passive bodily dynamics, all of the shortcuts, all of the efficiencies that other speakers have been describing. So this is useful because policies that you compute within that possibility space are guaranteed actionable. They'll depict doable things that will help us approach our goals. Here's Migo, the orangutan. She's sort of busy there. She's going to stick the stick in water to check the depth before trying to cross the stream. So, you know, it's fairly advanced piece of behavior. So our estimated actionable landscapes are inflected all the time by inward-looking information too. So I think if we're thinking about embodied action, we shouldn't just think about those external actions. There are all of the internal ones where your body has to take action to keep itself within the bounds of viability. So that sort of external actionable landscape has to be in contact with all our own predicted bodily states and needs. Maybe this is what underpins emotion that was mentioned earlier. Maybe it installs a kind of sense of mattering, why our actions actually matter in the world. These are Iberian goats climbing an almost vertical dam wall to harvest salt. So their actionable landscape is quite an interesting one. So I think all these ideas about actionable spaces and embodied mattering fit very well with Professor Kuniyoshi's opening, one of the remarks in the lovely opening talk: embodiment imposes meaningful constraints. It's a way of pursuing that kind of idea. I won't say anything much about this, but you could dig deeper. You could look at the quantity known as expected free energy, the cumulative prediction error expected under a sequence of actions. And there's a lot of work in predictive processing that suggests that this might be very relevant to understanding conscious experience. And I think we sort of fill in the gap there by noticing that it might be relevant because it delivers a sense of poise over an action space. We believe that consciousness and knowing your own poise over an action space are so intimate that if you understood knowing poise over an action space, you'd have solved consciousness. So there are direct links to the emergence of a thin sense of self. These sort of longer term poises require you to treat yourself as a kind of system that can bring about future sequences of sensory information. And that's a kind of thin sense of self starting to emerge at that point. Okay, second puzzle, which will be quick, and then I'll wind up. check out the pulsing brain on the slide, hopefully you can see that, and ask the question, what makes it the case that you really experience the pulsingness? You don't just use a kind of pulsingness detector to come to know that the brain is pulsing. You really have your visual experience presents pulsingness. We can, for example, detect pulsing at frequencies that we couldn't see, like a violin string oscillates at a certain frequency beyond anything that we can see, but we could use a machine to detect that. So what is it that allows your visual experience to present pulsingness? There's a good old philosophical conjecture here that we think is important, which is that we hear sounds and we see that brain as pulsing when they occur within the range of bodily engagement, potential bodily engagement. So you could potentially tap along to the beat or bob your head to the rhythm, assuming that your peripheries are all working as they should. So in that way, the experiential pulsing quality might itself reflect an estimated action repertoire, the actions we kind of predict that we could launch, just assuming that we weren't, paralyzed or otherwise impeded. There's some consistent neuroimaging evidence here suggesting that rhythm and beat perception engage motor areas of the brain even when you're not moving. So this is all very speculative and incomplete, but our idea is that better attention to action and embodiment, when you locate it within this bigger framework of seeing the brain as a prediction machine, will help us understand why conscious experience has the contents and character it does. This might be the machinery that delivers a human Umwelt, the world as it matters, to an embodied agent constrained to act in its world. So those are all the things that I wanted to say today. It's just trying to suggest that embodiment is super important for understanding consciousness and all of higher level cognition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Wow, it's amazing how much you can put it in 10 minutes. And I was always skeptical about this time constraints, but you prove it. It's actually very effective. Thank you very much. June, do you want to come out for your screen?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I do that.